So welcome everybody. I'm going to start doing math videos. So we'll see how this goes. Today I'd like to start off with absolute value. The reason I picked this topic was just because I put out a push notification and people apparently want to learn more about the absolute value. So I'll first explain how absolute value works, what rules there are for absolute value. If I have enough battery left, I might go into multiplying with absolute value, and we'll do a couple quick practice problems with absolute value. Short video, that's what I'm going for. We'll see how it ends up. So first of all, I'm going to teach just the core basic principles of what absolute value even is in the first place. So essentially, let's say you have a number line, right? So let's say that's my number line, and we're going to have three values. This will be my 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Positive, 1, 2, 3. And then, again, we're going to have the same values on this side, except on this side we have negative numbers. Okay, there we go. So, the idea behind this is that you're trying to figure out the distance to and from 0. I'd also like to point out, throughout this video, I'm making the video assuming that you already have an idea of negative integers. I'm going to make the video assuming you already know what x is, adding, subtracting with adding and subtracting constant terms with variable terms. I'm just assuming you know all of that. If you don't, leave a comment below and I'll make a video teaching all of that for sure. So the idea behind it is that all you're doing is figuring out the distance from 0. And how you'll see absolute value most times is a set of these beautiful two little lines. The absolute value brackets is what they're called in the math world. So let's say we're trying to find the absolute value of 3%. So we're taking the absolute value of 3. And all we're doing is figuring out the distance from 0. So let's say we're going 1, 2, 3. All I really moved was exactly 3 values from 0. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. And that's my answer. So that's pretty much the concept behind absolute value. I'll let you write that down real quick, and then I'll just go over some basic kind of rules for absolute value. Yeah. Great. Okay, so rules when doing absolute value. First rule, at least thus so far, absolute values typically taught in a pre-algebra class. So far you haven't seen imaginary or non-real numbers. So the first rule I'm going to throw out there, this one's just for the now. Eventually you'll find imaginary numbers, but I'm not going to go over that. So first thing, you're going to take absolute value of all numbers. You can do it for all numbers, variables, all numbers, and variables. Okay, and then when we're doing numbers, we're going to do, let's say, 3, 4, 21. There you go. Boom. Second rule for taking absolute value, you always, when you take absolute value, you always end up with a positive number. Answer. Okay, so you always end up with a positive answer. Those are the two big main rules for finding absolute value. Other than that, you can kind of do absolute value of everything, really. I mean, like for me, I'm getting my degree in math, and it's rare and crazy, but I'll see absolute value of like crazy big numbers, small numbers. You'll see that in something called ratio test. It's so much fun. So this is the idea behind it. So you have to have all real numbers or variables when taking absolute value, that's a must. So like if I were to do, I could do absolute value of y, a, b, c, d, x, whatever variable. And then when you're taking absolute value, you'll always and forever end up with a positive answer. You will never, ever, ever get a negative answer from absolute value because you can't have negative distance. What you're doing again is finding the distance from 0, so you can never have negative distance. In the real world, that doesn't exist. You don't like call up your friend Joe and be like, hey Joe, you know, where did you go? He's like, oh, I went to Sacramento. Oh, really? How far was that? Oh, it was negative 50 miles. Like, it just, distance doesn't exist negatively. So those are your two main rules for taking absolute value. Other than this, I'm going to run through some quick practice problems just to make sure you get the key concept, and then I'll set you off on your way. So let's go through that real quick. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay. I feel like a professor. I even pre-wrote all of these. Okay. So our practice problem, we're going to be doing the absolute value of -5. So again, similar idea. When you're taking the absolute value, all you're doing is finding the distance from 0. So if I'm traveling to -5, let's say we're going on the number line to -5, either way, I'm still traveling a distance of 5 because you can't have a negative distance. So our answer for that would be, again, 5. Other than that, now we're going to start working with variables. So let's say we have -5x, and we're taking the absolute value of that. Again, same idea. You're traveling -5 and then x, whatever your x is. But because x is a variable, you're still traveling a certain distance from 0. It's just that distance isn't given, so you're traveling like the actual distance x. So here, same idea. You'd still have 5x. And I'm not sure if you're starting to pick up on a pattern here now, but you're starting to realize that basically all you're doing is rewriting what's on the inside, but without the negative sign. That's all you're really doing. So now I'm going to do another one. This one's going to have more of like addition, and see if you can work with that also. So we're going to have the absolute value of -x plus 1. Same idea. If you were to plug anything in for x, then what you'd end up doing is still trying to get a positive number from that. So the x would be positive. Plus 1 is technically all you're saying is positive 1. You're adding a 1 to it. So then that would be a plus 1. And then last one we're going to do, I'm just going to run through a real quick one when it comes to multiplying with absolute value. I'll let you write that down real quick, and then I'll go with what it's like to multiply absolute value. Sorry about that. As you can tell, I still have roommates and such. I don't live alone yet. Part of the college life. Okay, so yeah, basically that's the idea behind these. Okay, so when you're multiplying with absolute value, you could do one of two things. Let's say, I'll give you an example. We have -3 times 5. Okay, so you can do this one of two ways. First, I'll teach you way number 1 in the first form, and then we'll do number 2 over here. I shouldn't do this, it's a small board. Oh well. First way, what you're going to do is multiply the numbers on the inside and then take the absolute value. So basically you're doing -3 times 5 inside of the absolute value, and this would give us the absolute value of -15, which would still be just 15. The second way to do this, I'm going to move over on this side. The second way to do this is we just do the math for each of the absolute value functions, and then we multiply. So absolute value, let's say we have -3 times 5, right? Absolute value of 5. We actually just, instead of doing the work on the inside and then taking the absolute value, we're doing the work and then multiplying the two integers. So first we're going to do absolute value of -3, which is just 3. And then multiply it by the absolute value of a +5, which is still just +5. And that would give us 15. So either way, as you can tell, you get the same answer. Those are the two ways to multiply absolute value. Next week, I'll be doing a video on division with absolute value and subtraction with absolute value. That's it for now. Please leave a comment on my video if you need help with any other math, and that's it.